The city was quiet, too quiet. The streets that once held children's laughter and rushing cars now lay broken and empty. Buildings stood like bones of giants, cracked and hollow. Smoke rose in the distance, black against the silver sky, and the only sound was the low hum of alien patrol ships moving above. Daniel pressed his back against the wall of a ruined shop. His clothes were torn, his face darkened by ash and dust. He held his breath as a shadow passed across him. A hovering drone scanned the street, its red eye searching for life. The machine paused, then moved on, leaving silence behind. Daniel exhaled slowly, his heart pounding like drums inside his chest. He was the last. At least that's what the aliens believed. Every other human was gone, erased from the world in fire and steel. The invaders had swept across Earth with ships that blocked the sun, with weapons that cracked the ground, and with cold voices that said humanity was finished. They thought they had won, but they made one mistake. They left one human alive. Daniel looked around at the ruins. He remembered the sound of his mother's voice, the laughter of his friends, the cheers at a stadium where thousands once gathered. All of it was gone. Memories burned in his chest, fueling the fire inside him. He whispered to himself, "You should not have left me." His days were spent hiding, moving when the aliens looked the other way. He drank rainwater that gathered in broken stone. He ate what little food he could find from ruined stores. Sometimes he chewed on dried leaves just to quiet the hunger. But more than food, he needed something else. Hope. That was the hardest to find, yet it lived in him still. The aliens believed humans were weak. They called them fragile, simple, soft. That was why they never cared to finish Daniel. He was beneath their notice, a ghost among ruins. But ghosts can become nightmares. Daniel knew he had nothing left to lose, and a man with nothing to lose was dangerous. As night fell, Daniel climbed to the top of a broken tower. The wind cut across him, sharp and cold. From there he could see the alien city built on the bones of Earth. Tall black spires with glowing lines reached to the sky. Ships floated between them like sharks circling prey. The aliens were celebrating tonight. He could hear the faint roar of their voices carried on the wind. They thought Earth was theirs. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. His body trembled, not from fear but from rage. He whispered again, this time louder, "I am still here." His voice echoed against the stones, carried into the night. For a moment, it felt like the ruins themselves listened, like the broken earth wanted him to speak those words. He climbed down and returned to his shelter, a collapsed subway tunnel where shadows hid him from patrols. He lit a small fire with broken wood and watched the flames dance. In the flicker of light, he pulled a piece of metal from his bag. It was a human knife, old, chipped, but still sharp. He placed it beside him like a friend. Tonight, he would sleep. Tomorrow, he would plan. The aliens thought the war was over, but Daniel knew the truth. The war had only just begun, and they would regret ever leaving one human alive. High above the ruined Earth, the alien city glowed like a nest of fireflies. Their spires shone silver and green, their banners moved in the cold wind, and their voices rang out in triumph. The Empire believed they had broken the human race. They believed their conquest was perfect, flawless, unshakable. Inside one of the tall towers, alien commanders gathered in a great hall. The air shimmered with strange blue light. Holograms showed Earth's surface, marked with red zones of destruction. Their leader, a tall figure with skin like glass and eyes like burning coals, raised his arms. "The humans are gone," he declared. "Their time is over, their weakness is proved, their spirit is crushed." The crowd of alien officers roared in agreement. They laughed when humans were mentioned. They called them soft flesh, short-lived creatures, a mistake of nature. In their pride, they believed no human could ever threaten them again. They toasted their victory with cups of glowing liquid, singing songs of conquest. None of them knew, in the ruins below, a pair of human eyes watched the sky, waiting. Daniel sat on the roof of a broken school. From there, he could see the spires in the distance. He could hear the echo of alien drums beating across the land. Every sound of their pride struck his chest like a knife. His hands gripped the edge of the roof until his knuckles turned white. They believed humanity was finished, but they had no idea. His mind went back to the day of the invasion. He remembered the skies filled with fire, the deafening sound of ships breaking through clouds. He remembered soldiers fighting with everything they had, families running, children crying. He remembered the alien voices booming across the city. Submit or be erased. That day burned inside him, and it would never leave. Daniel whispered to himself, "You think we are weak, but you don't know." WUS. The fire in his eyes glowed brighter than the alien lights. At the same time, in their hall of victory, alien voices turned cruel. One commander joked, Perhaps we should have kept a few of them alive, pets for our children, another sneered, or slaves for the mines. The others laughed, shaking the air with their mockery. They were blind to the danger of their arrogance. Back in the ruins, Daniel searched through a collapsed building. His hands pulled away bricks and broken steel until he uncovered something buried beneath. It was a torn flag, dusty but still showing the colors of Earth. He held it in his hands, feeling its rough fabric. For a moment, his throat tightened. His people were gone, but this flag reminded him they had once stood proud. They had once fought, and they could fight again. Daniel tied the piece of cloth around his arm. His voice, though soft, carried weight. "I will not let them forget us." Night spread across the land. The alien city lights glowed like stars, but in the dark ruins of Earth, another star had begun to burn. It was not made of fire or fuel, it was the will of one human. The aliens celebrated louder, but their songs of pride would not last. For every cheer they raised, Daniel's anger sharpened. For every insult they spoke, his resolve grew stronger. They thought leaving one human alive meant nothing, but soon they would learn the truth. Their victory was only the beginning of their regret. The night was cold, the ruins whispered with the sound of broken glass and the rustle of wind moving through empty streets. Daniel moved carefully, his footsteps silent as he entered the dark mouth of an old subway tunnel. He had heard rumors once, before the fall, about bunkers hidden deep underground, built for a war no one ever thought would come. Now he searched for one. For hours he walked through the tunnel, stepping over rusted rails and piles of rubble. His torchlight flickered across graffiti left by hands long gone. Hope and fear twisted inside him. What if the stories were lies? What if there was nothing left? He stopped when he saw it. A heavy steel door buried behind stone and dust. Half of it was broken, but the other half still stood strong. Daniel forced his way inside. The smell of stale air hit him. His torch revealed a chamber, walls lined with shelves of supplies, broken crates and metal lockers. Dust floated like snowflakes in the air. His heart beat faster. For the first time since the invasion, he had found something more than ruins. He searched quickly. His hands moved over old equipment, torn uniforms, faded photographs of soldiers who once stood guard. In one corner, he found weapons, rifles with cracked barrels, explosives that had rusted, blades still sharp. He lifted a rifle, checked it, and sighed. It was too damaged to fire. But then, in the back of the room, he saw something else. A workbench stood covered in tools, wires, and strange devices. Human engineers had once worked here. Their unfinished projects remained, small machines with blinking lights. Daniel studied them, his mind racing. He was not a soldier, but he was human, and humans were builders, thinkers, survivors. He remembered what his father once told him. A tool in the right hands can change everything. He picked up a small box covered in dust. When he opened it, he found a device that pulsed with a faint blue glow. It was incomplete, but he could guess its use. A disruptor, maybe. Something that could blind the alien drones. His hands trembled as he touched it. Hope surged through him. He whispered, "This could work." Hours turned into days as Daniel worked in the bunker. He cleaned the weapons, repaired what he could, and studied the strange devices. His fingers bled from sharp metal. His body ached from hunger, but he did not stop. Every spark from his tools was like a heartbeat, reminding him that humanity still lived through him. Above, the aliens moved through the city, still blind to what was happening below. They did not know that the last human had found a seed of resistance. They did not know that their pride had already planted their downfall. One night, Daniel finished his first creation. It was crude, wires twisted together, parts held with tape and broken steel, but it hummed with power. He tested it near a drone that patrolled the ruins. When the machine flew overhead, Daniel activated the device. The drone's red eye flickered, then went dark. It crashed to the ground in silence. Daniel stood over the wreck, breathing hard. He had done it. A smile touched his face for the first time in years. He dragged the broken drone back to the bunker, already thinking of what he could build next. Every part of it could be turned into a weapon. The aliens thought humanity's fire was gone, but Daniel had found the spark. And sparks, no matter how small, could light a blaze that no empire could control. The hidden weapon was not just the devices in his hands, it was him, the last human. The night was heavy with silence. The alien city glowed in the distance, bright against the black sky. But here in the ruins, only shadows moved. Daniel crouched on the roof of a collapsed house. His eyes followed the path of an alien patrol moving below. 3 soldiers walked with strange weapons in their hands, their armor glowing faint green. A drone hovered above them, scanning every corner. Daniel's hand tightened around the small disruptor he had built from scraps. He whispered to himself, "Now is the time." For weeks he had hidden, watching, learning, preparing. Tonight would be different. Tonight he would strike back. He waited until the patrol walked into the narrow street between two ruined walls. His heart pounded, sweat ran down his face. He activated the device. A pulse of blue light burst out. The drone above flickered, sparks jumping from its frame. Then it fell, crashing to the ground with a hard thud. The soldiers stopped, looking up in shock. Their voices hissed in their alien tongue. One of them raised a communicator to call for help. Daniel did not give them the chance. He rolled a piece of broken metal down the rubble. The noise echoed like thunder in the empty street. The soldiers turned their heads toward the sound, and in that moment, Daniel moved. He leapt from the roof, landing hard behind them. His knife flashed in the darkness. The first soldier fell before he could raise his weapon. The second swung around, but Daniel grabbed his arm and drove the blade deep. Green blood sprayed across the stones. The last soldier tried to fire, but Daniel shoved the disruptor against his chest. The device hummed, and the armor sparked violently. The alien screamed, then collapsed. Daniel stood over the bodies, his breath ragged, his hands shook, not from fear but from adrenaline. For the first time, he had fought back. For the first time, the hunters had become the hunted. He dragged the bodies into the shadows, stripping their weapons and gear. Every piece was useful. Every scrap of alien technology was fuel for his war. Far away in the alien command tower, alarms suddenly lit the screens. A patrol had gone silent. Drones sent to check reported nothing. Only smoke and static filled their signals. Commanders frowned. "Impossible," one hissed. "Humans are gone," another answered coldly. "Then why do our soldiers not return?" Daniel returned to his bunker, dragging the drone wreck with him. His firelight flickered across his face. His eyes no longer looked tired. They looked alive. He placed the alien rifle on the table, studying its strange design. He whispered, "You will regret leaving me." The next night, another patrol vanished. A week later, a supply line was destroyed. The aliens began to whisper among themselves. A rumor spread through their ranks. One human survived, some laughed, but others felt fear. They remembered how stubborn humans were in the war, how hard they fought even when defeat was certain. Daniel knew the war had truly begun. Every strike he made was louder, sharper, more dangerous. He was no longer just surviving, he was fighting. And with every move, he was writing a message across the ruins of Earth, a message the aliens could not ignore. The message was simple. It said, humanity is not finished. The aliens could no longer pretend. Something was wrong. Patrols vanished. Drones were found broken. Supply routes went silent. Their commanders shouted in anger, demanding answers. In their pride, they had laughed at the idea of one human surviving, but now fear whispered through their ranks. A decision was made. The Empire launched a hunt. Thousands of soldiers spread across the ruins of Earth. Drones filled the skies like swarms of black birds. Every street, every shadow, every tunnel was searched. The order was clear. Find the human, kill the human, erase the mistake. Daniel watched from the darkness of an old train yard. His eyes followed the alien soldiers as they marched below. Their green armor glowed in the night, their weapons aimed in every direction. He smiled coldly. They thought they were hunters, but they did not understand. He was the ghost in these ruins. He was the shadow they could never catch. For days, the hunt continued. The aliens burned buildings, scanned the ground with bright lights, and tore through the rubble looking for signs. But Daniel moved silently. He slipped through cracks in walls, crawled through broken pipes, and vanished into tunnels when they came close. His trap spoke for him. A hidden wire tripped a grenade he had stolen. A rusted beam fell onto a patrol when he cut the support. One by one, the hunters became prey. Fear began to spread. Soldiers whispered stories around their camps. They said the human could walk through walls, that he could vanish into smoke, that his eyes glowed with fire. Some believed it was more than one human, perhaps an army. They did not know it was just Daniel, one man fueled by rage and memory. One night, Daniel struck hard. He planted explosives beneath a bridge used by alien transports. When the first convoy rolled across, fire tore the night apart, metal burned, screams echoed. The explosion lit the sky like a second sun. From miles away, alien commanders saw the glow and realized the human was no longer hiding. He was declaring war. Daniel retreated into the shadows. His chest heaved with exhaustion, but inside him burned a fierce joy. Every strike reminded him of his people. Every victory whispered their names back into the world. He spoke to the ruins around him. "Do you hear me, Earth? We are not gone." The aliens grew desperate. They sent larger groups, armored units, even machines built for war. Yet Daniel adapted. He never fought where they were strong. He struck where they were blind. A supply drop vanished. A tower's power lines were cut. A commander's quarters exploded in flame. Each act was a wound to their pride. In their towers, alien leaders argued, "This cannot continue," one shouted. "We crushed humanity. How does one survive?" Another hissed, "He is not just surviving, he is fighting." For the first time since their victory, they felt doubt. Daniel sat in his bunker, surrounded by stolen weapons and broken drone parts. His hands were cut, his body bruised, but his spirit was sharp. He looked at the glowing alien rifle on his table and whispered, "You should have finished us. You should never have left me alive." The hunt had begun as their mission, but it ended as their fear. Because no matter how many they sent, no matter how wide they searched, Daniel was always there, in the dark, waiting. He was the ghost of humanity, and he would not stop. The hunt dragged on, but no matter how hard the Empire tried, they could not break the ghost that haunted their ruins. The last human was more than a man now. He was a storm moving through the ashes. Yet Daniel knew he could not fight forever alone. His strikes hurt the enemy, but to win, he needed more than weapons. He needed allies. One night, while moving through the mountains, he found something unexpected. In the shadows of a cave, voices whispered. He crept closer, knife in hand, ready to fight. But instead of soldiers, he saw them. Aliens, not conquerors, but slaves. They were thin, weak, their eyes hollow. They had been forced by the Empire to dig and work until their bodies broke. Now they hid, afraid and starving. At first, they pulled back when they saw him. Their language was strange, but fear needed no translation. They had heard of the human ghost, and they thought he might kill them. Daniel raised his empty hands. He spoke slowly. "I will not hurt you." They didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone. He shared food from his bag, dried scraps he had saved. He lit a small fire and gave them warmth. The smallest of them, a child with silver skin and wide black eyes, touched his arm gently. It was the first time Daniel felt he was not completely alone. Over time, he learned their story. They came from other worlds, conquered long before Earth. They had no hope left. They whispered that resistance was impossible. Daniel looked at them and shook his head. "No," he said firmly, "it is not impossible." His voice carried a weight that made them listen. The next day he showed them how to hide better, how to set traps, how to move in silence. They watched carefully, their eyes wide as he taught them. At night, he told them about humans, about his people, about how they never gave up even when the world burned. They could not understand every wise ord, but they understood the fire in his eyes. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the broken slaves changed. They began to believe. They followed Daniel, not as prisoners, but as friends. When he struck an alien patrol, they helped carry the weapons. When he built a trap, they set it with him. When he whispered, "We fight," they nodded. The Empire started noticing something strange. Patrols reported not just one attacker, but many. Supply lines were hit in 2 places at once. A tower collapsed far from where the human was last seen. Whispers spread faster. They said the human had built an army. In truth, it was not an army. It was the spirit of resistance. Daniel had lit the spark, and now others carried it. The aliens who once believed in nothing began to fight beside him. They were weaker, smaller, but with him, they felt strong. One night, as Daniel sat by the fire with them, the silver-eyed child leaned against him. He stared at the flames and felt something stir in his chest. It was not just rage anymore, it was something brighter, something stronger. It was hope. The human spirit was no longer his alone. It lived now in others, in their hearts, in their hands, and the Empire, in their pride, had no idea what was rising against them. They thought they had destroyed humanity, but instead they had spread it, because humanity was not only flesh, it was fire, it was will, it was the refusal to die, and that spirit was alive again. The Empire grew restless. What had begun as whispers now spread like fire through their soldiers. The human ghost was no longer a tale. He was real, and worse, he was not alone. Armies were not supposed to rise from ashes, but somehow, this one human had turned slaves into fighters. Fear crept into the hearts of conquerors. In their tall black towers, commanders shouted at one another. "Crush him," one demanded. "Burn the ruins. End this now," another argued. "We already tried. The more we strike, the stronger he becomes." For the first time since Earth fell, they felt uncertainty. Pride cracked. Far below, Daniel stood at the edge of the ruins. His allies gathered behind him, beings from different worlds, scarred, thin, but burning with courage. They held stolen weapons, makeshift armor, and eyes full of fire. Daniel looked at them and nodded. "Tonight," he said, "we end their pride." His voice was steady, strong. The last human had become more than a survivor. He was a leader. When night fell, the attack began. Explosions shook the alien city. Towers cracked under fire. Drones filled the sky. But Daniel's fighters brought them down with stolen rifles and clever traps. The ruins burned. But this time, it was not humanity that suffered. It was the Empire. Daniel moved like a shadow through the chaos. His blade struck, his disruptor pulsed, and alien soldiers fell before they could react. Behind him, his allies roared. The slaves who once whispered in fear now shouted in defiance. Their voices rose like thunder, shaking the night. From the command tower, the alien leader watched in disbelief. This was impossible. How could one human cause this? His hands trembled. "We should have killed him," he hissed. "We should never have left one alive." But it was too late. The final strike came when Daniel and his fighters stormed the central spire. The halls shook with battle. Blood stained the walls. Lights flickered and died. Daniel reached the top, facing the alien leader. For a moment, silence filled the room. Human eyes met burning alien eyes. One filled with rage, the other with pride, now shattered. Daniel raised the torn flag he had carried on his arm. He planted it in the broken floor. His voice rang out like steel. "We are still here." The words echoed through the tower. Carried into the night, the alien leader staggered back, his pride collapsing with his empire. The battle ended with fire and silence. The once proud city now smoldered. The empire had not been destroyed by weapons alone. It had been destroyed by the mistake it made long ago. It had left one human alive. One was enough. Daniel stood among the ruins, the flag still tied to his arm. Around him, freed allies gathered, their faces lifted toward him with trust and hope. He looked at them and saw not just survival, but the beginning of something new. Humanity was not gone. It lived in him, and now it lived in them too. High above, the stars watched silently. The universe would remember this night, the night the aliens learned regret, the night they discovered the truth. Humanity could never be erased. Daniel whispered to the sky, his voice soft but unbroken, "You should never have left me alive."